thank you for your attention throughout the day. I'm excited for this panel. Part of the mission of this event and for Groove and Greater MSP is to bring more people into the tent and to just get started angel investing. We're at whatever stage you're at. And so we have 3 great panelists with different paths on that journey, and we can take some lessons learned from those things. But before we get into the investing side, these are all amazing professionals outside of investing. So could each of you, starting with Bonnie on my left here, just give a little bit of your background and professional career?
Sure, thank you. I'm happy to be here today. I loved Angel Fest last year, so I'm excited to be here again. My background, I always say I was raised by 2 entrepreneurs in Davenport, Iowa, so I probably had no option but to be an entrepreneur. And I started my first 2 companies when I was 24. And unlike a lot of people, I don't have any industry specialization. It's just more, I see an idea, I think it might be interesting. So the first 2 companies I started with, one, I imported bathing suit tops from Brazil that were strapless using 3M adhesive. So I was living in New York City at the time. I didn't even know really what 3M was other than Post-it notes. And I also started a technology training company at the time serving banks and law firms. And Lotus 123 had just come on the market. For any of you that know that product, it's like Excel, but it was kind of the first desktop technology. And I could really relate to just diving in and wanting to be great when Angie was talking about being an entrepreneur. But I sold my first company at age 30, broke even, and thought that was such a massive failure when actually I'd say now that was okay. Mm-hmm. And then had my best exit when I was 39 and sold the technology training company to the Washington Post. I like to also throw in that I'm the mother of 4. So you can have, be an entrepreneur and be a mother, as well. And I just feel like entrepreneurs are my favorite people in the world. So happy to be here today.
Thank you. Maurice?
I'm happy to be here also. My background is more corporate. So I've worked for Procter & Gamble, Medtronic, Novartis, and several other companies, primarily in the area of operations. So I help people do more, better, cheaper, faster. And a few years ago, got into the venture capital investing.
Well, it's great to be here today. Jason Bauer. I am a scientist by training and did a lot of my schooling at University of Minnesota here, so it's great to be on campus. My background is in immunology, and I work for a large biotech pharmaceutical company right now in medical affairs, and have really enjoyed getting to understand the local sort of startup ecosystem and really being a part of giving entrepreneurs in the medtech space a chance to grow their idea.
Excellent, thank you all. I wish I could say I'm a scientist by training. That just sounds cool. Do you feel cool when you say that?
It is kind of cool, but also it also can be a little bit nerdy. So I've got my I got a ways
mutually
to go.
Exclusive.
I have a collar on right now, and I don't have a t-shirt on, so I'm just kind of getting into the what did Michaela call it? Venture casual.
Yeah.
So,
It's a very professional looking crowd here for a startup-ish event. So Jason, while we're on you, let's now go back through and how did you get started angel investing? What is your thesis, if you want to call it that, and why do you do it in the first place?
Yeah, so it all started, some of the individuals who I had the pleasure of working with in my graduate work here at the university, went on to think about starting companies, and they, gave me a jingle and said, do you want to invest? We have this idea. It's early on. It's probably going to fail. But hey, what do you think about this idea? And so really it started in, I would say 2017, so about 6 years ago, making a couple of initial angel investments in founders I knew. And I really think that's been a core to my philosophy is really doing my due diligence on a founder, and certainly people that you have 20, 25 years of history with, you kind of know what makes them tick, right? And so I had made a couple of investments in the local medtech space, and through some of the networking that I think is one of the best parts about an event like today, but even just angel investing in general, is the network that you can build. And so I got pulled into the Groove Angel Investment community and a couple years ago, and have been a part of that angel group. And then I've also made some investments through Engage Venture Partners, who you saw earlier with Kelly presenting. So, really, I've made more investments in, early medtech. Really, my thesis is founder first, and then second, obviously, the tech and what they're trying to solve in the healthcare system has to be in one sense, sort of audacious to even like dream to disrupt a healthcare ecosystem that's very complex. So I think founders have to have sort of that balance of being a little bit crazy, but kind of have the chops to get it done. And really kind of there's a fine line there. And so I've made several investments the last couple of years in the medtech space here locally. And I think myself being in healthcare, but not in medical device and a lot of the areas that are really prominent here locally, gives me the ability to kind of see healthcare and where the inefficiencies are without being too bogged down in those particular areas to kind of pull out, some of the disruptive tech that has potential.
Cool. Maurice?
My group and I go back probably 40 years. We were in college together. We floated the idea a few years ago of getting together and doing some venture capital investing. I'm kind of the networking person and the person that kind of pulled it all together, came up with our approach, and then floated the idea to the rest of the folks. And there are 4 of us that are involved in the group, and we took on that we would invest in companies that have disruptive technologies. We are not looking at one specific area or segment of business. We've invested in fintech companies, we've invested in medical device companies, we've invested in sports analytics, so it goes across the board. We look at pre-stage or pre-seed companies, typically, or seed investments. We don't have a geographic preference except for they need to be based in the U.S. And we typically look at those companies. We look at 4 aspects. That's how we got started. We look at 4 aspects. We look at risk, we look at the finances, we look at the product, and then we also look at the management. And we try to balance in looking at all those to evaluate those to decide whether we're going to invest or not.
And I got started when I was looking at the history of my angel investing. I got started in kind of my mid-30s. And 2 of my college friends from the University of Colorado were starting a business and needed some money. And I really believed in them and their idea and invested some money. And I like to say your first experience is kind of an important one because I invested money, did really well, and had the misconception that, this is really easy way to make money. And proceeded to invest in them another 2 times, where the first time is where we made our money and the next 2 times we didn't, which was totally fine. But the reason I really have stayed involved in angel investing is I love to inspire entrepreneurs. I love to see new ideas brought to the table. I feel in addition to money, I can be one of those people that can just give belief and just say when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do this. Yes, you can. And so I feel like it's been really an honor to be involved. It's not an easy way to make money, but it is a very joyful way to be involved in the ecosystem of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, ROI on belief, that was stated before. And I want to add to that, the starting at a young age. I didn't start at a young age, but I got started because somebody like you, actually a young woman from San Francisco who's a professional venture capitalist, was giving a talk at a similar conference like this. And she said, just start early, start small, and you don't have to be independently wealthy to invest. Write small checks, figure out a plan, and build that plan over a couple of decades, and good things will happen. So I like that advice. So when we were talking prior to this, we all kind of had this similar thought of like, one check you might not believe you're an angel investor, but maybe that second check, you're like, okay, this is a thing that I'm doing. So maybe let's start with Maurice. Can you talk about like those first couple, you were investing with some friends, so on the choose your adventure category, like you can invest by yourself, you can invest with some friends, you can join an angel group like Groove or Engage. How did you and I assume your first checks were with your group, or tell me about those first couple deals.
Well, the first check I actually wrote was on my own.
Okay.
And then it moved with the other group, the other
Can you
co-founders.
hold the mic a little higher?
The other co-founders of our group. The first check, we're all engineers by training. And so we thought that we could go through and check the boxes and make the investment and everything was going to be good. We found out that was not the case. There was some intuition in this, not just check the boxes and we were going to be able to deliver on it. So our first check that we wrote was to a company called Goal Setter, and it's a fintech company. They are doing financial literacy and so forth. They have turned to be a pretty good investment for us. She's growing the company pretty well now. She has some partnerships and so forth. The second company we did was a global sports analytics, and they were doing basketball analytics in Germany or in Europe. That company has not turned out so well for us. The pandemic hit and basketball stopped. And so that company's not going very well for us. But we continue to invest, continue to follow our principles around investing and looking at those four aspects, and then peppering it with a little bit of intuition.
I think, the first, I think I mentioned this earlier, obviously, the first couple of deals that I did were with founders who I knew. And I think, certainly there was a lot of naivete on my part of just all that goes into due diligence. And certainly my day job is a lot about digging into data and understanding, data and thinking about things from a lot of angles. But I think I was fairly caught up in not necessarily all that goes into making an investment. And I think that I probably put in maybe a little bit more money than I would have, even though both of my first investments have all had multiple follow-on rounds and are still, doing a great job and executing. But now, as I've kind of just seen the breadth of the opportunities that are around here, and I was just completely naive to the size of the venture community, especially in the medtech space, and how many opportunities I think are actually viable and deserve funding. And so I would say, those first few, I definitely went all in. And I think, your personality type should kind of dictate some of your philosophy about angel investing. And for those that are very sort of organized, structured, you want to come up with a plan, you're going to deploy X amount of dollars, you're going to deploy it over 10, 15 different companies, et cetera. I'm kind of more of a jump head first and then figure out everything after. And so I put, a fair amount of money in those first two companies. But now that I've been exposed to the broader, ecosystem, I wish almost I had a little bit more to spread around as I've gotten going. And so, I think the amount of due diligence that goes in, especially in the medtech space, into all of the IP and where that can bog you down, is something that I didn't fully grasp as I was getting into this. And I think that's where, for me, being part of these different groups, right, where you have several people taking a look at these deals, you have people with a broad range of experience that are looking at this, and bringing their expertise has really been something that, now that I've gone through it almost seems very challenging for me to do something now just on my own without having a lot of other eyes on it to kind of be a sounding board for the investment.
Well, I would say when I got started in angel investing, it was almost a little accidental, being invited to help different people.
Did you even call yourself an investor at that time?
I didn't even know. No, I don't think I called myself anything. I think I just, there weren't events like this, or, so it was more like, all right, these people need some money and it could work out well. But I think once I realized that I was an angel investor, and I moved to Minnesota from New York City probably, I don't know, 28 years ago, then I would tell people I'm interested in this kind of area. And could you, if you know of opportunities, could you get me invited? And I was always surprised when I was invited to a meeting to consider investing. I was usually the only woman in the room. And that really made me think, okay, part of what I want to do in this area is get more women in the room. Not because, I just want more women to have the opportunity. And I think we're often overlooked as not having our own money to think about. So, but I think as I got more intentionally involved, the only thing I wish I would have done differently, because as an entrepreneur, I'm so independent and always felt it was better just to make my own decisions and not be with a group and not be part of something. But I think there is a lot of due diligence that would have been helpful to me, because my due diligence is more about, do I like the leader, do I like the founders, and do I like their team? And am I inspired by their idea? Where it would have been really great to have other people behind the scenes looking at all the numbers or all the terms or things like that, which are not really fascinating to me, but would have been good to have. So that's what I would have done differently when I look back over those years. But I've had such a great experience. I'm really glad I got involved.
Yeah. Can any of you think of what, before that first check, were there things that either in your head or in the environment that you were thinking, I shouldn't do this, or that held you back from getting started, or Maurice, sounds like you got a story, but like, how'd you have to break through that?
Well, I think a part of it is just understanding the risk. I typically call it the sleep factor. If an investment keeps me up at night and I can't sleep, that's probably not a good investment for me. But the aspect of just going into it, understanding that, we're typically looking at it, we're pretty successful people. And knowing that 9 out of the 10 investments you make are going to fail. That's a sobering thought. But the one that does succeed will hit it big. And so just getting past that and being okay with the fact that you're going to have more failures, more strikeouts than you are going to hit home runs. And just understanding that and being able to get past that.
I think it really comes down to, why are you investing, right? Is it to diversify your portfolio? Is it to, give checks to underrepresented founders or Minnesota-based companies? Is it to break into the ecosystem? And that's I would say where, on my kind of career journey, certainly when you've worked for, a huge company for a long time, you maybe have an entrepreneurial spirit, you don't know where to begin to consider, I could stay at this big company. There's a lot of safety, right, in working for a big company, but also there's opportunities for long-term with my career. Do I want to start a company? Do I want to work for a startup? Do I want to invest, either part-time or full-time, right? And so I think for some of those first checks, they really unlocked the ability to gain a network, build off that network, right? So certainly you're deploying cash into these companies. It might be a 10-year journey before that cash can be pulled out. So you really have to be cognizant of that. But also it did sort of trigger this journey to build a network, get connected to other people, and figure out, it sort of makes that, that decision of when you're kind of mid-career and sort of where do I want to go, if you're just not really connected and to say, oh, I'm just going to go start this or do this, like it just seems like difficult to grasp, and then you maybe not going to take that leap, even if you're someone that is willing to always, take a leap. And so I think those first few checks, certainly you have to look at them as an investment, right? We're not just in the business of throwing money away, but I think it also has to be thought of for the bigger purpose that it is.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
I would say it was a little, investing even in the first company that I did. At the time I was married, and my husband is not an entrepreneur, and just felt like that was so risky. Why are you going to risk our money, in that way? And so every single investment I made was a little, that it was a hard
Hold the mic a little
conversation.
closer.
It was a hard conversation to have, because I really appreciate he had a different risk tolerance than me. I'm very much a people connoisseur, so I love being, part of this network. But the way I handled that was I just kept track of when we made money, and then said, okay, that's the pool that I can invest, since we made money, and we didn't have that money before. And that seemed to work out. But I didn't lose sleep over any of the money. I even tell people when they are going to do this, don't invest money that you can't lose. Don't lose sleep over this. This is things that you have extra that you can kind of share with other people.
Yeah.
So.
One more question for the panel, and then I want to open it up to the audience. I know there's a lot of people here either early in their angel investing career or looking to get started, so we want you all to have the opportunity to ask your questions. Maurice, you mentioned 9 out of 10 deals could fail. We talk about investing money that you can afford to lose. We also, as a group, talked about, are there ways to mitigate that risk? Not that you can make it go away, but in your decision-making process, how do you think about eliminating as much risk as possible? Go ahead, Jason.
I can start here. I think a lot of what I do is try to understand the vision of the founder, and to understand, do they know what they don't know, and are they aware of what they might not have already kind of have they thought about what the potential ways that this is going to fail? And I would say on a couple of the investments that I've made, certainly having founders that are very confident and are like, I'm going to bust down this barrier and we're going to make it happen. I think you have to have that kind of mentality, because you're going to get knocked down over and over again, right? But I think the founder has to have an awareness of how this could go wrong. And so that's, I would say, a question that if I don't get the right answer, then that's going to be an immediate no, if they don't understand what are the ways that this is going to end badly.
And one of the things that I mentioned earlier was one of the aspects that we look at is risk. And the risk is, have they really understand and dug in to how this could fail for them? And are they taking steps to mitigate the risk? Whenever I hear a founder that says this is a risk-free investment or this is not really risky, that's typically one that we will walk away from because they're not very self-aware. They've not done the due diligence to dig in and really understand what risk and how this could fail for them. So that's one key aspect of it. And the other is the connection with, as Jason said, with the founder. And what is their vision? Where do they want to take the company? Do they really understand what's going on in their environment from their competitors and from the overall ecosystem that they're operating in?
And I would say I probably would have joined more groups to do the due diligence, but the way I looked at an opportunity was really using my own intuition, and seeing what felt right to me. That has always served me well in my life in general. And then really just looking at the leader and the leadership team, knowing, will they do whatever it takes to do their best? That's all you can ask. There's no way to guarantee anything, but do they have the grit to knock down whatever barriers come up and pivot when, there could be a new opportunity that shows up as well. So I would say, rather than due diligence, I probably just was more intuitive in my approach. Yeah, on the people.
Interesting point on diligence of a group can help with that, knowing different questions to ask, different skills to bring to the table. Is it data or is it people? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think there's such a wide. I think what I'm always impressed with is when you get into a group, the breadth of experience, and then I think as Bonnie, you kind of pointed this out, is your intuition has gotten you where you are in whatever you're doing right now, right, in your day job. And so I think leaning into that, but also learning how to then pull out things from other people and what they're good at, and like, so what is this person telling me about this deal, and getting that wide range of opinions and understanding what the person telling me, their opinion about this deal, well, what is their background, right? And then having the intuition about, how are other people perceiving this is, I think, another part of the group. It's not just your own intuition, it's your intuition about other people's intuition, I guess, if that's makes sense.
Totally. All right, so any hands in the crowd that you have a question for the panel? No questions off limits, no such thing as a dumb question. While we're waiting, can we have a round of applause for Miss Shannon Paul and her suit?
All right, we'll start on this side of the room, and if you have a question, I'll be happy to look for you after we move on from this one.
Hey, I'm Garrett, and I'm speaking as a college student graduating in 2 weeks, but this could apply to new investors as well. But just in regard to you mentioning that it might not take a large check to necessarily get into VC, what are some of your thoughts on best practices to get involved as early as possible? And if you have an idea about like a minimum amount of deployable capital required, and just if you have any advice on best practices to do the due diligence now and get involved as early as possible, or just start thinking about it.
Anybody want to jump on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the opportunities could be as few as a few $1,000s. There's certainly a lot of, these, sort of crowdfunding approaches where you can put even smaller checks in. I think the other thing to do as you're thinking about building your network and trying to even break into the industry is even doing due diligence on deals where you could point out where, like, I would have made this investment, right, or I wouldn't have, and kind of, building that out, right? It's like I would have deployed this amount of capital, or here's some opportunities I looked at. I think that is, even if you bring to the table a unique, approach, I think a lot of founders, at least the good ones, are willing to kind of, hear other people's opinions. And even if it's a smaller check, I've had some situations where there might have been a minimum and I was able to put a check in for smaller than that because they were interested in, having me a part of it to kind of, be a resource for them. So I think if you have specific expertise, a lot of times you can kind of get away with a smaller check. I don't know if others on the panel have thoughts.
I was just going to add, I love that you're interested in thinking about this. I would definitely talk to some of your professors might know of ideas, but doing exactly what you just did. I'm interested in this. Telling the people in your network, telling your parents' friends that you're interested too is a great way. But I think there's always a way to find a way in. And what you may have to do if you don't have the minimum is get other friends to invest alongside you. And then, your investment ends up being a little bigger.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate that, or say the same, reinforce that, was around networking with friends and family. I think that you also has an incubator that you could touch base with to see your potential investment opportunities, venture group, things you're doing here with connecting with folks, pooling your resources with others to invest as a group so that you can get up to, if you're looking for a minimum, bringing your expertise to bear. Our group not only provides capital, we also provide advisory services. So networking, sales opportunities, putting people in contact with others, that kind of stuff that you can add value. Typically, when they tell you there's a minimum, yes, that's a minimum, but there's an opportunity to invest below. They always have a disclaimer in there that says this is the minimum unless waived by founders.
Everything's negotiable. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why I love this event is like breaking certain stigmas. Like, you have to have millions and millions of dollars to be an angel investor. False. You have to be a 60-year-old white dude who's famous. False. You have to have, you have to have 10 grand per thing. Also false. Like $1,000. Like, Angie's story was awesome, and I love that somebody highlighted 10 grand would have made a huge difference. So if 10 people would have given her $1,000, like that's a meaningful change for that business, and then kind of puts you on a path. So good question.
Hey, this is probably a shameless plug for Groove, but for the guy who just asked that question, they do have kind of memberships for a pretty small amount that I think gives you access to all like the diligence material that they use in making their decisions. For someone like you, it's a pretty small fee that kind of gets you involved, gets you access to what investments they're making, and you can then reach out to the founder and the person running those investment teams individually. And yeah, they may have a minimum amount that they want you to put in, but I think given your situation, there may be ways to either combine funds with friends, or they'd be willing to kind of waive that minimum investment commitment. So, I think Reed and the team here have done a really good job of bringing this community together, making barriers for entry pretty low, and it's a really cool way to be involved.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And full disclosure, I'm an investor in Groove and the Angel Fund. I'd like to say I was the first check into the first check fund, even before Reed's dad. And part of what I love about it is like a deal a week. Seeing like Reed and team have done the diligence. You get the benefit of all that. You get to read it, think about it, do your own research, and get reps, without having to make a decision. Part of my investing journey was, I mentioned the woman who said, get started early, get started small, just do it. I'm like, all right, I can do that. And I happened to have a couple of friends who were raising seed and pre-seed rounds. So I gave them small checks and I was like, I feel great about this, even if I lose my money. And then I realized I just happened to know two 30-something white guys that were raising money. Like, this is not a strategy. Like, I need a better plan than this. And so that's what got me thinking about more of a index fund approach. Reed and I collided, and I love Groove for all those reasons, but the barrier to entry being small is absolutely on purpose. So thank you for that.
Little bit the inverse of that question. There are thousands of accredited investors in the state of Minnesota, and far less than half of those have ever heard the term angel invest, I would guess. How do we do a better job of marketing to angels that don't know that they're angels?
Snap louder. It's not a snapping crowd.
The people who are not here today, St. Cloud, Mankato, Duluth, how do we reach them?
Well, there was no geographic requirement to get here. Tell your friends. That's part of the purpose of this event, is to let people know that this is a thing. But other thoughts of expanding the tent, so to speak.
Well, I don't know. I mean, broadly in the community, I'm not quite sure how to attack that, but I would consider myself an edutainer. So I oftentimes hosted groups of, 80 to 100 people in my home, and would have people, women and men, whoever, but I would have people come in and talk about, investing and the risks, and I would have a lot of startup entrepreneurs coming in and talking about what they needed and why they needed it. So it was a bit of a, organically grown group, but I think from that there were probably, 30 new investors that, got involved, but it on a small basis. So I think each of us could do, something on a small basis.
Well, I think what I was thinking about was the old commercial that says, and you tell two people, and you tell two people, and you tell two people. And so we become the ambassadors or the evangelists to get the word out.
Excellent. Other questions? Okay, well, I think we're standing in between you and lunch. Don't move.
Don't move.
Miss Shannon Paul.
Well, you can move in your seat. Like, don't leave your seat. That's all. So, but I like that he got to be the bully, not me. So, round of applause for Kevin and our panels, everybody.